We are Sarva. The future of education starts here. Hello and welcome to this episode of Everyday Genius. I'm your host, Pete Craig, and today it's a pleasure to welcome to the podcast a lady who's an expert in human potential, has also traveled the world and founded an NGO that is actually helping to support the Amazon, and in supporting the Amazon is actually supporting the whole world. That organization is called the Floresta Association. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into this. But for now, please join me in welcoming Franziska Freitag to today's show. Hi, Franziska.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this conversation, and welcome everyone who's listening and present with us today. It's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we dive in, there's a couple of questions I usually like to ask, and these are unrelated to anything else, but I think they're super important and not enough people ask these questions. So the first one is, what's alive in you right now?
What's the what? Sorry.
What's alive in you right now?
So much. I would say the change, like a childlike excitement. That's very present in me, where I observe very much the world and everything that's happening. There's so much that's happening in such a short period of time. And that's where I feel, I remember in the beginning, everything was a bit scary, no one knew what was going to happen. And we don't know what's happening. But now I see it with an excitement and with this childlike curiosity, to either way, wherever we are going as a collective, as a planet, there is change happening, undeniable. And that's very alive within me right now, as I guess with many people, it's what's present with everyone, this uncertainty. But rather than getting afraid about the uncertainty, I choose to really see it from a perspective of curiosity.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there are two ways of looking at it. You can look at it with fear, and you can look at it and let it paralyze you, or you can embrace it and look at actually the wonder that might be created as a result of it. And I think that's a beautiful way to look at things. And then I guess the next question leads on from that, and that's what's life inviting you to do more of?
Be more present, as always.
Yeah.
Because exactly like of that, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know where we'll be, maybe even tomorrow. And that for me has been very much, living literally all across the world without a proper base for years. Like the situation is very new, So for me, I got to spend a lot of time with my family due to this, but also very little time with my partner. So, whatever time I am getting right now, and whether this is with friends and family, my boyfriend or whoever, it invites me to be really present with that time, because, tomorrow I might have to go somewhere else already and don't even know it. So that's been for me a really big gift from this whole situation also, with the gratitude and the being present.
I think that's a great reminder anyway, because that's something that we don't do. We don't do enough. And if anything comes out of this, if there's one good thing that comes out of this, is that people are learning to be more present and learning to be more aware of their emotions and aware of how they interact with other people.
Exactly.
Cool. Amazing. So let's start off by just what's your mission in life? What's the thing that your purpose in life?
That is such a big question. I get this asked a lot, and I always say I believe there is a bigger mission and purpose, and then it breaks down in the execution, and that changes.
Yeah.
That doesn't always have to look the same way, and how we execute this purpose, this mission, that might change, a few times a year, maybe a few times every 10 years.
Yeah.
So for me, the bigger aspect of it is really to get more into who I am, to be more and embody more of who I am with every single cell of my body, and being present in this human body, and, remember the depth of that essence because the more I remember of that and the more I am physically embodied of that, the more people I can support on their journey doing that also, and the more people are supported in their soul potential on their path and their remembrance, I believe that's supporting the planet, and that's initially coming to what is really, the biggest love in my life, in my heart, is this beautiful planet and the people and nature and everything that's present here. So that, on a bigger level is like what my love is the biggest for, I would say.
Yeah.
But then, how I execute that obviously changes as I'm changing, it grows as I'm growing. But from a very early age, that's always been in regards with working and with people.
Yeah.
I started my own business when I was 24. But, the way I work with people is very different to how I work with people right now. It was a lot about conscious living, conscious eating, veganism. I did like a lot of talks in Australia for a while. And then I've been growing, I've been changing, and now I do something completely different, but built on the foundation of back then, obviously, So that's why I'm saying the execution always changes.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that, and this is something I see quite a lot, and I believe it's missing in families, it's missing in education, and that is exactly what you just described, which is understanding, diving into more of who you are and understanding who we are. Because it all seems to me that far too early we're disconnected from our true essence. We're disconnected from ourselves, and we're molded over time into something that perhaps we never ever realize. And for some people, they realize it through a particular event, or they might realize it when they're 40 or when they're 50, and they realize actually there's something that doesn't feel right, and they eventually they trace it back to this essence of who was them. Do you how do you, what triggered that for you? That search for that, or has that always been there for you?
I think you're right. It's a different trigger for different people. Many times it's, actually a painful experience in their life that triggers them to ask people questions. And I think for me, it's been a combination of different things. I was very lucky to grow up with a very spiritual mom. So, I feel like I was, without liking the word spirituality or, wanting to make this a big thing, the way I grew up was different than many people have been growing up and are growing up right now, I would say, and I was present in like Reiki classes when I was 9 years old. My mom herself is very highly certified in the coaching world. So, by 12, I was like helping her with the questions for her NLP graduation, and all these things. So somehow I was always very connected with that world. I remember, when I was 10, I would go and collect herbs, and have like big books about it and dry them and make oils and tinctures and smudge them at home. So I think that has always kind of been a part of me and in my life. And the guidance that I received through that has just been very magical. Like I could write a book about, so many, this is crazy things happening in a very magical way in my life. And then when I was 20, I found out about veganism, and I read about it, and it just made so much sense in my life. And I think through the change of my diet and my mindset, something within me started to change also, and that consciousness that we all carry started to grow and become brighter and lighter. And then with 24, like I said before, I decided to start my own business, and that really was the accelerator for my whole personal development journey and purpose and all of it, because I graduated in communication and media management. However, I had no idea how to build or run a business at all. Like that was nothing I learned at university, especially when it comes to self-worth. that is very much connected to selling your products, you
Yeah.
know, and then you're there, you're like, oh my God, I like have this burning desire in my heart to bring this to the world, but I really have to get out of my own way, you know. I hated public speaking. I would cry in front of, you know, a big percentage of people. So, you know, there was a lot of inner work needed for this to happen. And that, I think, was the indicator for me. But, you know, to say there's like, I didn't have this key event that many people have, you know, like someone dies that is close to them, they almost die, they get sick. Like, you know, these stories, I hear them so much with the people I work, and that's the trigger where a button gets pushed and they wake up, you know, they're like, fuck, what I've been doing like this whole time in my life, I need to change something. There's more to it. I didn't really have that. But that's why I'm saying, you know, I think for me, it was always the way I already grew up, that I was always like one foot in this world, you know, and then I just had to pull the second one. So, so that's been that. That's a very short version, you know, of that story.
It's interesting you say that, because I interviewed a young man for this podcast. He was 10 years old when I interviewed him. He's 11 now. And amazingly quite bright young man, so quite full of life, you know, lots of ideas, you know, very quite passionate. And I spoke to his I met his mum, and I spoke to his mum and found out he's got 4 other siblings, and they're all like that. And
really?
And the reason I bring this up is because she had her own kind of life event. But as a result of that, she started trying to reconnect with who she was and find out who she was. So she started going to, you know, seminars, personal growth seminars, and those types of things, very similar to, you know, to yours. And she was taking the children along with her. And the children, like, you know, just were playing, not necessarily sitting watching, but they were in the room, they were playing, and they, you know, now I think what they've got is they've got the benefit of a mother who's far more open. And connected with herself, but then they've also like just imbibed all of this energy and this understanding without really knowing where it's coming from, or without really pushing it, and that's allowed them to stay super connected with who they are and what they want. And then combine that with her just giving them freedom to explore those things within certain boundaries, and just saying, like, you go off and do what you want. If maths is not your strong point, I'm not going to make you do maths. You know, what are you passionate about? Let's find a way for you to do that. And I think that's that for me, that's hearing that connection and you talking about that, just kind of, I think, you know, points to the fact that actually that's something that's needed, is this reconnection of you know, parents with themselves, and then this ability to allow their children to be a little bit freer.
I think that's a big part of it. But you know what I even think is more part of it is when you as a child grow up in a world where, you know, things that we can't see, you know, like energy work and that kind of stuff, you know, an alternative medicine in a way is present already. You know, you already grow up with an expanded mindset that most people don't have. And, you know, then you can see what that makes out of like little human beings, you know, and what they grow into. And I think that is something, you know, if that was more present. And, you know, I mean, there are so many places now where people, like in schools, you know, where children start meditating already and these kind of things. And I think that's really important if we want to grow, you know, a new generation that's more connected with themselves, like you said before also. But that, again, like you say, you know, needs parents that are already connected more to themselves also. So it's, I guess, going hand in hand, you know.
I think that time's coming. You know, some of the studies that we've been looking at, you know, suggest that millennial parents are already, you know, far more open to that type of thing.
Totally,
so,
for sure.
I think we're on the cusp of, you know, a new generation, and we just need to provide the right stimulus for them in order for them to become aware that, you know, they're hyper aware of what's going on in the world. You know,
exactly.
They're hyper aware of, like, you know, the challenges that, you know, so many of them are quite aware of, you know, the UN's sustainable development goals that you wouldn't believe. So, you know, if they're aware of those things, let's find ways of kind of allowing them to use their genius to solve those.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I truly believe that, I think we millennials, we're here to shake up, the world and be a little bit of, the rebellious kind of generation that like questioning everything and really annoyed the previous generations to the core. And I really do believe, the next generation that comes after us, those are the kids that are going to change everything.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Is that where they call it this drive for the work that the Forester Association came from? Is it that, that kind of rebellious streak? I guess did you go out there with a purpose, or was it part of your travels and you just realized that there was a problem here?
I always wanted to visit the Amazon. I remember when I was like 5-6 years old, I would point at the globe, staring at my mom, being like, "Can we go there?" It's like, I want to go. And a very strong connection with the indigenous cultures. Like from a very young age, I would read books and books and books about it. So, I believe as everything, it's always been within me, but then it needed me to actually be there and spend a lot of time there. That brought me to the point after like 2 or 3 years consistently visiting the Amazon, where I was like, all right, like this is my home, the at least the home of my soul, if it's not, my home. And I feel so connected here, and I received so much through the time I spent here, through the people I got to meet. And I had this dream, really, really strong dream about the nonprofit itself, and it was like kind of a person standing in front of me, and I was having a conversation with it. And I believe, I made a decision in that dream to devote my love and my life to the protection, not just of the Amazon, but of our planet. And that, again, is what I said before, then just comes to how do we execute this vision, this mission, the purpose that, has already been there and is always going to be there. And that for me has been the nonprofit. So for me, it's a container that I can pour in all my love, all my passion, everything that makes me happy and fulfills me, I get to express through the work that I share with the nonprofit. And, it's not limited on the rainforest, really. It's, forests and the world in general that I believe just needs so much more attention and appreciation and, balance very much.
Yes.
And, I always go between like, who am I, like one single person, like there's so much change that's needed on this planet. Yes. Like I'm like this little ant, like what can I do to do that? But then I'm like, but who am I not to do it? If I am at the end of my life and I'm about to die, and I ask myself, have I really done everything for me possible to support this change on this planet? And I couldn't answer this question with 100% yes, I did. Then I would not be able to die in a fulfilled way. No. So then, yes, I am only one person, but at the same time, there are so many of us. And if every single person thinks there's just one person, you see what's happening, like nothing happens. But if every single person thinks, yes, but there are more of me, and I can only do the best I can. And obviously, over the time, this has been growing a lot also. We have a really big team by now, so it's not just me anymore. It's a lot of us. Yeah. And that just by itself is really beautiful to see.
Perfect. When you mentioned that from an early age, you kind of had a connection, or you felt a connection with the Indigenous people. Was that, and I'm asking this just because I'm kind of super curious, normally though those types of things are kind of like pushed out of us, those types of interests are not encouraged. Yeah. Was your like your mother supportive in that? Did she encourage you? She allowed you space to explore that?
Yeah, she supported it as much as it was possible for her understanding back then. Yeah. For sure. And that was a lot, she would, I didn't have the money to buy me all the books when I was in primary school or, like early high school. So she would do that, and she would take me to like crystal shops so I can get on with my crystal addiction and all of that when I was, 10 or 11. But then I remember this really, really big moment. I was 15 years old and I found a flyer of this Celtic medicine man, and he offered a 3 years apprenticeship, where you would live with this person. Like, I've never ever come across anything like this after I saw this flyer in Germany or in Europe in general. I mean, you're European, like most of this knowledge is gone. There is not much left of it. And I found this flyer at a friend's place, and I took it home, and I was like, Mom, I want to do this. I want to live with this, person for 3 years and learn everything about the plants, about the animals, about like all of this. And she's like, well, you can do that after you've graduated. Like, right now you're going to school. Yeah. And it broke my heart, it really, like, it's still such a strong memory in my mind. But, I think she did what every good, parent would have done. What she thought was right at that time, which was, to have a proper graduation so I can do whatever I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
So yes and no, but more yes than no.
Do you feel that? Do you feel you missed anything because of that, or did you?
I still ask myself.
Yeah.
Like, I still ask myself, where would I be right now if I had done this? Like, what would I be doing? And I'm still curious to, maybe in a parallel universe, I'm living this life. I don't know. But not missing out. I believe there is a plan, and, that's been unfolding beautifully. And I wouldn't be where I am today without graduating high school and going to college and all that kind of stuff. But of course, like, definitely there is a part of me that is wondering, what life would be like if I had gone down that path.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like the time that you've spent in the Amazon, the time that you've spent with the Indigenous people has kind of like given you a large chunk of that. Yeah. Regardless. So you've still found a way, that passion
exactly
wasn't kind of like sucked out of you. That within. And I think that for me is the piece that normally gets missed. Is the system, if you want to call it the system, for want of a better description. For too many people, they lose that connection, they lose that dream. And I think the thing that I'm picking up with you is that that dream never left. That strong connection that you had.
No, just got bigger.
Never left. It just grew and grew. Yeah. It was almost kind of just put on pause for that short period, but it kind of squeezed its way out. In other ways.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And that, again, is this the way we grow up, the society we live in, where you get in school that teaches you how you have to be. And if you're not that, it means you are not intelligent. Yeah. And that does kill, inspiration, creativity, and all of that. That is such a gift in every child. So, let's see where that goes.
How do you see that differently in the Indigenous people?
Yeah, very different. Like, self-expression is just such a normal given standard, I would say. Where, I mean, there is basic school lessons, like writing, reading, like the basics of it. And you can say there's good aspect and a not so good aspect of it also, because some then want to go study, and that's a bit more challenging. But at the same time, like, they actually have time to be children. They are out all day playing, and it's not like they have to ask for permission to go out, in a way. Like, there are so many families, so many children, and they all like look after the children at the same time without really talking about it. It's just normal. So to see kids growing up that way, I think is already super special. And then in combination with nature, like, they literally are embraced by nature every single day. And I think that already does so much on the nervous system, on the physical body, on our health, mental health as well, that is super special in itself. And then obviously, the connection that they have in a spiritual way, that they grow up with, their traditions, their stories, their way of living is so different, so connected. And that just raises completely different humans compared to the way we grew up, and kids in our world grow up,
Mm. Are they aware of what's going on externally? Are they aware of the impact that the Western world is having on their environment, on their ecosystem?
Absolutely. I mean, they had the missionaries there, or like at least, the particular tribe that I'm working with, and a lot of tribes, have experienced the same history. So they were forced in a way to be connected with the Western world, and once they have been, there is no going back anymore, because then they became dependent on food, on gas, on all different things, money, that they just never had
Yeah.
ever before. So yeah, they're very much aware of that Western world. I think, especially right now, even more than ever before, you know, because so far it's like it almost feels like it's separated when you're in the jungle, because everything there is just, it's like nature, it's like in balance.
Yeah.
And then there's the outside world. That's how it feels like. But right now, the outside world is actually actively threatening the indigenous cultures through this virus, whatever is true about it or not. There are people dying of it in the jungle. So if they want or not, the Western world has become a huge part, even more, of their world right now as well.
Yeah.
Which is why I think there is even more support needed. And it's really interesting because, now there is a lot of like COVID relief funds that are going on with different projects and nonprofits for these people. But, at the same time, they still need food. Like a lot of these tribes, they make their money to pay food and their families through groups that are arriving there, or the work they share, outside the village with the world. And none of this is happening right now. So I'm like, yes, like a COVID relief fund is great, but it actually just, catalyzes what's already been boiling underneath with the issue that they've been having with the not being sustainable anymore.
Yeah.
So we need to look beyond the COVID and actually just underneath of what's coming up because of it. And that is, permaculture, this is sustainable living, waste management, all of these things. So again, you can choose the perspective where all of this is painful and a nightmare, or you can see it as a gift, that the current situation is just bringing whatever has been very present with these tribes before already just to the surface even more, and it's just another aspect where as a collective we have the opportunity now to look at and be like, all right, we fucked up, like how can we do better right now?
Yeah and that's part of the work that you do with Floresta then.
Yeah, exactly. It's the projects, exactly, that's one thing. And then the raising the awareness of it, that's the other thing, because that's the thing, we don't know what we don't know. And many people just don't know, and this is where I feel like lovingly I want to show, what else there is going on in the world that we don't see on TV, that we might not learn about in school.
How important then is education of those things? Because a lot of people perhaps don't see the connection between the problems that are happening there and see why that's relevant for their children to understand.
It's education, and you can educate so much. I think personally, and that's a very personal opinion, what is even more important is consciousness. As long as people don't have a consciousness of a collective breathing organism that we are on this planet, they can hear and read as much as they want about the people in the Amazon. Their consciousness is not going to allow them to care. And I'm not saying this from an angry place. It's just what I've come to see and learn and experience the last few years. It's really just through the evolution of one's consciousness from like this ego, I, everything is about my needs, my life. And only when that expands and comes into the understanding of a we, collective, that's when we start to care, and when we start to see, wow, there's so much more beyond my individual life that is really important too. What can I do? So for me, it's the balance, of the numbers, the facts, like, the reaching the logical brain. But even more so, it's the work on the consciousness of people and humanity, because, I think that's what's really, really the key to everything. And that's, my intention with the work I do, to expand that and to help that, so that more people actually understand that this is going. Hold on, I just got to change this room. So let's continue here. Exactly, so that's where I'm trying to find a way of communication that speaks to both, the logical mind with numbers, and like, hey, check this out. There's so much new going on here that you might not have heard about. But then also, how can I connect with people on a heart level, on a consciousness level, to, light a spark within them also.
How do you see that, or what do you believe needs to happen? Because there's two levels, or there's two entry points where we can have that impact, where we can change that consciousness. The first one is with the adults, and communicating that message with data, like you say. But then it's a much harder job to get someone who's already very ingrained in who they are and what they believe, to have that changing consciousness, that awareness. And then the other point of entry, it's kind of like the children, the next generation.
Yeah.
So how do you solve those two problems? And I'm not expecting you to have an answer.
Really good question. I think if I had the answer to it, no, but of course, it's one of the most important questions, and obviously I ask myself that question also. And I think it's the way you also, addressed before, the work with the kids, for sure. Having the opportunity for them to grow up in a different way, but for them to grow up in a different way, the work also has to happen with the parents, right? And then beyond that, the work can happen with anyone and everyone. So I think, this goes really into the mysteries of an individual soul's journey, and whatever your beliefs are around that. We can look at it from a perspective, well, every path is chosen. We already have chosen on the experiences that come, into our life on this planet while we are here. But then the question is, where's the free will, and how much can we do to make it better, or are we just robots really, following our soul's calling that's already been written down? So there's a lot of different theories and a lot of different perspectives that we can choose to look at this from, which I think, it's good to try them all on and figure out the best of everything. But I think if a person would ask me, what can I do, to support this whole transition and change, I think the most important aspect is to speak our truth, every single person, and to be really okay with being uncomfortable. And that's something I'm super passionate about as well, is having these very highly uncomfortable conversations, with myself, like helping my clients to have them with themselves, but also online, like publicly, talking about the things no one else wants to talk about. It's like, I don't know, this person you don't want to talk about, but you feel like already you have to talk about because it's something important, like your tax return or something like that, and you're like, oh my god, I don't want to talk about it, but it's there, it's so present, and these are the conversations, the truth that I think we all need to have, to admit that we have done our best and it got us so far. And now we have to admit that we have to change, we have to do things differently. We can't continue the way we have. And, I'm also really much in a place where I think you can share that publicly with people, and you can speak your truth, which is the only way to create change in the first place. Because if I know all of this, but I keep it to myself, then what's the whole point of it? There's this theory of what's a lie. Is lying just actively saying words that are not true, or is it also to keeping the truth away from people who might need to hear it? And that's where I think this is the best thing we can do as an individual, is to speak up and that's key, from a compassionate place, from our heart, without judging others, without pointing at others of doing things wrong, or just in a different way that we believe is right, but to genuinely just share from our heart and help people to see that there are other things that are important also.
I agree 100%. I think there's you don't know until you speak out. You don't know how many other people are there out there that have the same view as you, and if you hold that in, then you're denying other people the opportunity to to speak out, and you're denying yourself the opportunity to perhaps solve a bigger problem.
And I think this is where it starts with our individual journey. Like, we can only look after ourselves and be on our and be the best we can be, and that's ideally then we also get to help other people to also learn how to do that. But if we don't start with ourselves, there is no point in getting started at all.
A question for you, because it's really interesting. You studied communication, and you talked a lot about kind of heart-centered kind of communication. I know from being in business a long time that there's and a lot of that time being in the marketing space, most of what's spoken, most of what's communicated, doesn't come from the heart. Most of what comes from the head. How was that for you? Kind of like learning a way of communicating, a way of kind of putting a message across that that you perhaps knew internally was not right.
That was exactly, I think, one of my trigger points, to be honest. I graduated and I had, the best CV. I did all the things. I did all the internships with great companies, and I was in a really good position to start off a really amazing career in this area. And I remember I had a job offer as a trainee or something like that with, I don't know, a big fashion brand. I think it was, I don't know, Chanel or Dior or something in Germany. And I thought that's what I really wanted, because that's what everyone else at my university wanted. And then I didn't accept it. I was like, I can't do that. If I work in marketing and PR, which I really enjoyed, it has to be for something that I can stand behind 100%. If that's what I'm selling, if that's what I'm making bigger, if that's what, all my work is about every day, then it has to be something I believe in. And that for me was such a huge wake-up call, where I was like, okay, but what is that? What is that product or service that I truly believe in, that the world needs, actual needs, that I'm willing to sell? And then and then I was like, all right, screw this. I'm leaving Germany, and I went to Thailand, and I started to work in online marketing for a scuba diving school in Thailand. And I was like, yeah, people need this. I feel good about this. This is really cool. And I got really into the corporate social responsibility, and already started working with the NGOs in Thailand to protect the reefs and all of that. And, so I was like, trial and error, I was finding out what I'm passionate about, and also what I don't really enjoy doing. And from there, I went to Burma to work with a big NGO there on their projects and stuff like that. So, you can use whatever it is that you learned and turn it into something coming from your heart. Even people, I don't know, lawyers, judges, people in finance, whatever, you can always use that education and that experience and use it for something good. And I think that's what's actually really, really important. And that's what I work with a lot of people, you know, that like, I'm looking for my purpose. I'm like, you know, not everyone is meant to be a Reiki master, you know, or whatever it is. Like, your purpose may just be to work in finance and support, you know, a really good company, conscious business with that, you know, and that's amazing and so important. So yeah, it's been tricky, and then I used it in a good way.
It's funny. It always makes me laugh because the reality is when you actually start communicating from the heart and you give a message from the heart, you don't need all of the tricks. You don't need the NLP language. You don't the hypnotic writing. You don't need the hype. You don't need any of those things if you actually communicate your message, and your message is pure and you communicate it from the heart instead of from the head. The impact is more powerful. Yeah,
absolutely.
And actually you reach the right people, and those right people are the ones that are going to carry your business or your message forward. They're not going to be a consumer. They're going to be an advocate. They're going to be a supporter. They're going to be an ambassador. So it always makes me chuckle when people say, no, we've got to do it this way. We've got to use this type.
Do it your way. That's all I say. Do it your way. Do whatever you want to do. Be you, you know, and that's exactly what you say. I could write a whole book about this, or run a whole training and workshop about it, because it's so important and so true, especially, you know, in these days where people get so much more sensitive in general. You're so much more accessible for feeling other people's energy, you know, so you can write the best sales copy, but if people feel like this is off, you know, and it's not who you really are, they're not going to buy. And that's amazing. You know, I think this lie detector thing is just getting more and more sensitive, and it's you know, and also the question, like, how easy can life be? Like, do I need all these, you know, special sales language skills, whatever, or can I just be myself? And through being myself, I'm polarizing already because no one else can be that. You know, and people just get inspired by that and then want more of that, exactly who you are. And that brings me back to the beginning of our conversation, you know, where it's about being more of myself, more and more and more and more. And helping other people to be that too.
And I think that's a really beautiful message. If there was one message to take out of this call, it's that. It's be more of yourself, reconnect with who you are, find out who you are, and be that unapologetically.
Exactly.
Amazing. Is there, so before we wrap up, is there one message that you'd really like to share? Apart from that, apart from the one that
apart from that one, you know, I think this is the most important message, to be honest. You know, to be like, becoming okay with who you are, I think, is one of the most transformational journeys of our life. You know, because it means to unlearn everything we thought we are not, or that we have to be, you know. And I think this is really something, if someone listens and takes away one thing, this is the thing, you know, it's okay to be you. In fact, you know, that's what's needed. And to fall in love with whoever that is, and with a childlike curiosity to actually get to know that person. You know, I think that's the gift of being human and being in this life, and everything else is really missing the point. You know, if we're chasing one thing after another, materialistic, you know, approach, we're missing the whole point of actually getting to know this incredible being that has the opportunity to experience itself right now in a way where we are conscious that there is something, you know, there is a voice inside of us that is talking. And it's like this beautiful gift that we all receive here, and I would love to see everyone, you know, to make the most out of it.
And that's where genius lies as well. It's our true essence, and at that point, we are all geniuses.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thanks for watching.
Some real gems, and I hope that everyone will take something away from that. If nothing, just to be more themselves.
Exactly, and to be okay with that.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Francisca.
Thank you.
We are Sarva. The future of education starts here.